before we start this session, let me ask you, how many of you wear specs? And how many of you consider yourselves as a person having a disability? People who wear specs, I'm just asking them that, wearing specs, do you consider that as a disability? Not a lot, only one or two, isn't it? Which means, and by definition, anything is a disability if that is an aberration, which is if it is different from something normal that exists, and if you need a special aid for your accessibility, which is the specs for you, which by definition means that you are disabled. However, the point being that having these specs is so streamlined, has come into such ease of accessibility that it's no longer even considered as a disability because इतना आसान है specs ले लिया और सब कुछ normal लग रहा है अब. If this can happen to us, why can't it happen for other forms of disability? We need to reach at a place where all such disabilities get that platform and that ease of accessibility that they don't even think कि हमारे को कुछ extra problem है क्योंकि अब इतना आसान हो चुका है हमारे लिए सब कुछ जैसे हम सबको लगता है जिनके पास specs हैं. So that's the place where we should reach one day, and I really hope that day comes soon. So my first question to Anupama. Anupama, what role does the organization culture play in improving this inclusion of people with disability in organizations? Because we've heard so much about organizational culture since morning, and we've heard about empathy, we've heard about change and the mind shift, but everybody has a different mind. Then how would you streamline such an organizational culture with people of different beliefs, different mindsets, different cultures, different ideologies?
See, I think anything, whether it's disability, efforts towards disability or anything else, really requires an ecosystem and a way for it to be sustainable. So it's not sort of a flash in the pan, right? And organization culture, if you ask me, plays a very, very important role because it is not just about hiring people with disabilities, it is the interaction that they go through on a day-on-day basis. It's not just the programs that we introduce, but how those are implemented in word and in spirit. And for that to happen, every person in the organization needs to be conscious of what's happening. Everyone needs to participate in what's happening because that's how you sort of create an ecosystem around you that works. So, a small example. Very recently, last year, we did a hiring drive. And traditionally, we've had a lot of people with orthopedic disabilities that we hired. But this time around, we had a lot of people that we were hiring with hearing impairment as an example. And we recognized that while the intent is there and while we are hiring them, on a day-on-day basis, how will they sustain? How will they make sure that they feel a part of the organization on an everyday basis? So we said, okay, we will get sign language trainers, but we obviously will not have sign language trainers in every part of the organization. So we ran a program, we asked our staff across, do you want to learn sign language? Whether you have someone in your team or not, do you want to put up your hand and be part of the ecosystem that empowers and enables staff to be there? And we were surprised at how many people put their hand up. Wow. And we said, okay, let's go ahead. Similarly, when we're talking about, let's say, visual disability, you may not be impacted directly, but should you be in the know-how of, let's say, the assistive tools that are available, really be able to reach out and help someone who needs it. So I think if we can do small things to really make this as part of the DNA of the organization, that's how we really see it progress, and that's how we see the environment be such which allows our colleagues with disabilities to thrive.
Wonderful. So doing small things and not waiting for something big to happen is the key, isn't it? That's what the organizational culture probably is all about. I was, a while back, I was a professor, a tenured professor at the University of East London. I was based in the UK before I moved back to India. And in the area of diversity, equity, inclusion, what we have seen is that India is moving at a very, very fast rate, very, very fast speed when we talk about gender. And even we are probably much ahead than the West, because I've stayed in the West, I've worked in organizations in the West, and I've seen that the work that we're doing in the field of gender is much faster than what's happening in the West. However, when we talk about disability, we are very, very far behind than them. So I don't know the reason. Let me ask Madhu. No, Aradhana, sorry. Let me ask Aradhana. That Aradhana, in a lot of organizations, what we hear is that we are ready to hire people with locomotor disabilities because we can manage them. But this profile of people of visually and speech impaired people might not work for us. What do you think? Are there any challenges around that, and how have you managed it in your hotels? Because Lemon Tree has set a benchmark much before a lot of other organizations started doing work in this area. The world knows what Lemon Tree is doing in this sphere. So please.
Thank you so much. Actually, it's true, and you spoke about UK, so I want to give you a small example before I answer your question. There is a best practice sharing activity that Lemon Tree has been doing with the UK, with Glasgow specifically, a college there, where we're talking about how we're including people with disability in the workplace, and it's part of our HR strategy. So it's incredible that while the UK may be ahead with respect to accessibility and education and healthcare for a person with disability, they are actually not ahead when it comes to employment. And that is something that they acknowledge every time we interact with them. In fact, we have to go again in a few months after a gap of COVID. And it's pretty incredible. And their earlier First Minister and Deputy First Minister, the government just changed recently, they both have interacted with Lemon Tree, one in India and one in UK. Where they've understood our story and they've told that college that, listen, please make sure that many other hotel companies in the UK and even others like retail and so on are able to interact and understand this piece of work. So it's something to just think about that, while it appears that we are not ahead, and it's true with respect to accessibility and education and healthcare, it's not true for employment. Okay. Now coming to the Lemon Tree piece around speech and hearing impaired and people with low vision, we started this journey 16 years ago, and it was a pilot. It was an experiment with deaf colleagues. After 2 years, when we were about 25 deaf colleagues in roughly 5 locations, an evaluation was done to understand how is this working. And the evidence was very clear. It was a small group of people, but the evidence was very clear that once you train them well, once they understand their task, they are able to participate just as any other hearing person would participate. They need to be able to get the standard operating procedures very clear in their mind. So there is a lot of work we do around training. I'll touch upon that later. So one of the decisions that was made in that evaluation after 2 years was that this will be part of our business model, hiring a person with disability, specifically speech and hearing impaired, low vision, and even intellectual disability, autism, everything. And it's been now 16 years, and that's what we do. So as a company today, we stand at about 10 to 12% people who are opportunity deprived in some way. This includes either a person with disability or a person from an economically and socially marginalized background, and it's true across the group. We have now 88 hotels in 54 destinations. It's taking place everywhere. And what we have been able to do successfully, in fact, you just mentioned it, Anupama, is to build the culture and to build the DNA around it, which is, it starts at the very top. It will start from the person who heads the organization. It will cascade down to all other CXOs or leaders. This is not the agenda alone of a person who heads diversity or of the CHRO. It is the agenda of the organization. So whether you are the operations head, sales head, marketing head, finance head, housekeeping, food and beverage, since we're a hotel company, any of these verticals is yours. You are executing inclusion in your vertical. It's taking place across hotels. So as a leader of that function, you must understand and believe in the reasons why we hire. There is actually a huge business sense to this. You get better results by way of engagement. You get lesser attrition. You get a different kind of way of looking at things. Sometimes we've noticed in restaurants, if it's very busy and we have a whole lot of speech and hearing impaired team members there, customers will actually look out for the person because they wear a certain kind of a badge like this. They will look out for that person because they know he will spot them more easily. So they cannot hear, but visually they are just quicker than a person who's hearing. And it's no fault of a person who's hearing, it's just the way that it occurs, right? They've trained themselves. So imagine our guests have understood that if I keep my eyes trained on that guy and I do like this, very quickly he'll arrive. So that's really amazing. Many more examples, but I wanted to give one. Thank you.
Wonderful, very well spoken, and like you said, it comes from the top down, and I think that's a very, very important message that we, keep on harping about in all, and it also has become a cliche, but still we need to keep on harping about it for all DEI work. That top down is the most important approach to follow rather than just the HR doing the agenda. Coming on to you, Madhu. Madhu, you work for Amazon. And just wanted to know, how has your experience been at Amazon? Looks like it probably with my interaction with you, it has been quite a comfortable ride for you at Amazon. However, do you think that if it would have been any other organization, it would have been difficult? And just we had discussed that sign language is also like any other language. It's like learning French or Spanish. And if we can be trained into learning French and Spanish, we can be trained into learning sign language too. Is learning sign language an important agenda at Amazon? And how has your experience been?
Before I start, can I get a round of applause from everyone so I know where you all are sitting? Thank you. You see, before I share anything, I get an applause. Thank you so much. You're so kind and such a fantastic audience. And the other round of applause that I want all of you, so I'll just be off mic for a second. Here is where I am. For those who cannot see me, those of you who are blind, you know where the stage is, because speakers are really, really deceptive. धोखा कर देते हैं. आवाज़ कहीं से आती है और हम blind लोग उस direction में देखते रहते हैं जहाँ पर speaker होता नहीं है. So just for those people's benefit. The third thing that I want to share is for you to give a round of applause. There's the sign language technique, and I'm not 100% sure, but I'll still try to. When we give a round of applause in sign language, we wave like. So that's the indication that that's Aradhana, please do correct me or model it if I did anything wrong. Another and the added applause will be when you wave like this, add snapping, that becomes accessible sign language applause, which is. So that's a little bit of a learning and an inclusive tip where you're including those who are deaf and hard of hearing and also visually impaired. Otherwise, if you do the clap only for hearing or deaf, people like me will be totally zoned out or ignored, and we won't even know that you've clapped for us, right? So that's the inclusive clap. My experience with Amazon definitely has been fantastic, being a person with disability, 100% blindness. One, absolutely a fair and an equitable space, an opportunity to work. I've been here, I'm going to complete a year at Amazon on the 25th, and before that, I was for the longest period in time with Concentrics. My HR partner, my friend is right here next to me. Anupama is a dear friend, and I wish her a very happy birthday 2 days in advance. So it was absolutely fantastic at Concentrics, spent 17 years in the space of learning and development, facilitating workshops, helping people learn how to be more inclusive towards people with disabilities, how to have gender inclusion, how to have inclusive leadership from top to bottom, bottom to top. And we also do bottoms up, right? It's important to have the ground staff and people who are literally the spine of the organization, who hold the organization to be sensitive as well. Moving on to the next part of your question, how important is it to have sign language? Well, how would you include a person in your family who is a non-hearing or a hearing impaired person? You would learn the language, isn't it? The language that they speak. Any organization, to my mind, is a family. It's your home away from home, right? And for you to make that space a home for people, our DHH associates, our deaf and hard of hearing associates, they don't just come to do the work and go back. They have relationships, productive relationships at work. And how does a relationship foster, how do we foster relationships? We foster relationships by being able to communicate. And if we can't, and what's the vehicle of communication with them? The sign language, right? And that's why it becomes imperative. We don't want to put people in buckets, okay? All DHH work together, full stop. Your manager is DHH, your senior manager is DHH, you are the DHH, that's the growth path, and that's about it. We don't want to put them into buckets. We want to include them in the family. And that's why we make efforts, we have special projects where we enable communication for our DHH family members, if I can put it that way. So I think the message that I'm sharing here is it is important to learn the language, and when you learn it, practice it as well, because practice makes us perfect. And how can we practice it? By having people on the family who we can communicate with in that language. So have I answered all parts of your question?
Of course. Thank you so much, Madhu. Thank you for that. Rahul, coming on to you. So Rahul, for a very long time, correct me if I'm wrong, you were working with Axis Bank, is that right? And now you have your own firm, a financial firm. So you are a numbers guy. You're into investing. Tell me, you have your own firm, and now we're talking about including people with disability into workplace. Do you think it has a business case to it? Or a lot of people here, and why I'm asking that question, why I'm asking this cliche question, which a lot of people, ask time and again, and also being a devil's advocate again in this conversation, because a lot of people sitting out here might have this question in their mind: what if I hire people with different abilities and it compromises on my team performance? Because I have a team, my organization may be a 5,000 or a 10,000 strength employee organization, but my team is a 10 employee strength team. And if I do wrong, I'm fired. If I go wrong or if I miss a deadline. So, and a lot of people here might be having that question. I don't, but a lot of people do. So does it have a business case to it? And you tell me, what are your thoughts on it? Mike is in front of you. Yeah.
Thank you, Akshay. And at the outset, I must thank BW and Dr. Neeru Kumar for having me here. Her energies are so infectious, and I hope this whole energy of inclusion spreads faster than Corona, and hopefully the world gets completely absorbed into it, and hopefully we are free of exclusion soon. I'll probably, to start that question, and it's a very pertinent question. Incidentally born, severely sighted since birth, it was hard to imagine somebody that a visually impaired could be cutting $1 billion check, looking at numbers. I'll put a very small story to this. There was a farmer who saved a small eagle, baby eagle, who lost its mother. But this eagle was raised in a chicken farm. Now, a chicken will always look down. Now, this eagle got raised seeing these chicken around and will only take a small flight. And this farmer got tired. He'll take this eagle to the branch of a tree and push it, it'll still come down. One day, this farmer stretched the neck of an eagle towards the sky, and suddenly the eagle was introduced to this huge, vast, beautiful looking sky, opened its wings, and started to fly. We've been talking about boxing people into categories. One of the reasons I think we could pick alternate paths or break these myths around can't do, because we refused to be a part of the group of chickens. Nothing offensive about chickens, hopefully. There are no chickens here to come and beat me for that. But, talking about an opportunity, and it's so important, and I often say I'm a capitalist at mind and socialist at heart, because agar dhanda nahi hai, to kuch nahi hai. We are not relevant. How large is this community? Why don't I throw some numbers, since Akshay, you called me a man of numbers. Globally, 1.8 billion persons with disability. Estimated disposable income, $1.9 trillion. Imagine. Put the first family to circle, $13 trillion larger than the size of China. That's a business opportunity we talk about persons with disability. We just heard about mainstreaming inclusion and, and valuable. The whole idea is, can we mainstream inclusion? So we are a venture capitalist firm looking to invest into businesses that are mainstreaming inclusion. He started by talking about spectacles. Today, spectacles are no more seen as an assistive device, but it's more of a fashion statement. I was talking to one of the leading audio manufacturing companies in the country, and we said, if wearing a spectacle is not a taboo, then why is wearing a hearing aid? And we said, can we do something to mainstream even hearing aids? And I'm sure eventually we will reach there. So one is, how large is this market and how large is this opportunity? I think if we can take the taboos away, if we make each one of these a part of Gen Z, I think Richa in the previous panel spoke about her 14-year using audiobooks as a way of communication. A book which was designed, or technology designed for visually impaired, talk about how mainstreaming expands. Coming to why people with disability in a workforce make an impact. Drawing clues from my own journey, it took that one person at all times and different stages who said, what will it take you to perform? I was never categorized, or I refused to get categorized in that specific set and say, this is the role defined for me, and I may or may not perform outside. We have to constantly push our own boundaries. One of the important things that come by being a part of the diversity group, you are able to bring a broader perspective. The concepts of equity come natural to you. It was no difficult or no different for me to lead a team of women, people with different sexual orientation, or people who had special needs. It was so normal for us. And there, having conversations on equity was so important. Nobody will ever step up to say, oh, can I do something different? But what the magic had created, when we will solve a problem, all these different perspectives will come forth, which otherwise from a single, or if you seclude the set for people who consider themselves as able or as privileged, again, these ideas would not have emerged. We heard enough and more that the world has changed with neurodiverse people. So this diversity, how important and crucial it is, we have seen. How important these numbers are. There is a data that suggests that companies which are more inclusive are 21% likely to outperform peers. So I hope you have tried answering some of this, but it's important not to get boxed. Really think of it as a business case. Give opportunity, and one request, let's just stop creating roles which are for specific orders. Give people an opportunity, let them look up the sky, let them expand their wings, let them fly.
Wonderful. Thank you. One point that comes to my mind after listening to you is, and putting people into boxes, is a small exercise. I've done it with quite a few people. I'll do it with you guys as well. What happens when I tell you not to think of a big pink elephant? Don't think of a big pink elephant with a long pink trunk, big pink flappy ears, small pink tail. What comes to your mind if I tell you not to think of a big pink elephant? The only thing that might be coming to your mind is the pink elephant itself, isn't it? So my point being, let's stop asking what are the challenges of hiring people with disability. Let's start asking the right question, which is, what are the advantages of hiring them?
Can I also add a perspective just to build up what we've been discussing?
Yeah.
And we've discussed this, or this has been brought out in a way, but statistically we say that there are about 15 to 20% of the world population who have one form or another form of disability. And it's just building on the case for including people with disabilities or visual disability. So when an individual is born, when you hear the, we say, oh, congratulations, beta hua hai, beti hui hai, the child is born. The child is that time not born with tags of a disability, of a LGBTQ+, this caste, that caste, this privilege or the lack of that privilege, so on and so forth. The child is born. And when the child grows up, in the discovery process, we know that this has happened, that has happened, or this is an added tag, so on and so forth. And then sometimes these tags come in much, much, much later. Building up to the 15 to 20% of people experience disabilities, which get that tag. But so many of us experience difficulties. We spoke about glasses. We spoke about sometimes because of maybe health reasons we may have a difficulty. And so when we design solutions for an inclusive world, we design solutions not just for 15, 20% of the world population. Research suggests we design those solutions for 60 to 70% of the world population. Because we may not know who may face a difficulty when. Today, if you give me a role as an able-bodied person, because you have all the apps accessible, the infrastructure accessible, tomorrow I'm struck by a difficulty or a disability. Will you say that I am not ready now because you have a disability? So we as a workforce need to be ready for including difficulties that we face as well.
By the way, the baby cry was very, very realistic. So let me introduce you to Rohail, and he is a journalist by profession, an editor at the Business World. Rohail, why don't you take this conversation?
Thank you so much. I'm just loving this conversation, and I must congratulate, for bringing up these wonderful stories. Let me start with you, Anupama. My next question is, which Rahul and Madhu also touched upon, is like she gave an example of this baby born. At that point, we don't have those stereotypes, and then we get into this cultural mix and we have the stereotypes. At an organizational level, how do you de-link those stereotypes on an everyday basis and ensure that everyone is sensitive towards what we are building, an inclusive culture, How does that happen? What is the story at your organization, if you could share a few points on that?
About a year and a half ago, so diversity was always a priority for us, right? But about a year and a half ago, we really sat down and started having some serious conversations about diversity. And we said, how do we take it to the next level? For context, we had about 250 people with disabilities with us at that time. And that number had been constant for about 2 or 3 years. They would get some, leave some, and so on and so forth. And we really sat down and said, you know what, this is not enough. We've made a commitment. We're now a listed organization. So we went out and we made a commitment to the street and said that we will be X% of staff with disabilities by 2025. And more than that, we realized that we want to be an employer that is more open, because we saw that the more diverse population you bring in, any kind of diversity, your business outcomes are better because people become more sensitive. People think more broadly. So it became an imperative for us. And since then, we did a couple of things that sort of really worked for us, but I think I'll just touch upon 2 or 3 major ones. I think one, there was a fundamental shift in the fact that diversity is not an HR agenda. Like Aradhana said, it's an everyone agenda, right? So we had a number of people that get involved, right from hiring to the business teams, to our training and quality team, HR team, L&D team, everyone. In fact, I have people from my organization sitting in the audience today who are the front runners of driving disability, and hardly anybody is from HR. All of them are from the main business teams, right? So that was one big shift. Second, we saw that what is important has to be talked about all the time. If something has to be part of your culture, you have to remind people of it all the time. So we started making very small changes. For example, now when we have our leaders travel and do site tours, we will make it a point that every leader will have a diversity session in every site that we go to. We'll have a round table, we'll listen to people, we'll understand what are the challenges, what can we do better, so on and so forth. We did a number of sessions with our diversity staff itself to really listen and understand what can we do better. But net, it started being talked about in every forum. In fact, just last year, at the end of the year, when we had our strategy and planning meet, which is a 1.5 day long event, we dedicated 1.5 hours just to talking about diversity. In fact, we invited Aradhana to be on the panel of that conversation. If people see that it is important for everyone starting from top to bottom, and it is being talked about again and again, the mindset itself starts to shift. You talk about it 5 times, 6 times onwards, you will see naturally it becomes part of people's conversations across the board. So I think that's the second thing that worked for us really well. And third is, you've got to be prepared that we tried to bring in some science. As an example, like you said, that sometimes when you're hiring people, there are biases that hiring managers have that they don't even know about. Someone will say that you know, this person will not be able to do this. They'll never say it is because of a disability, but in their mind, they will find a reason and they will convince themselves on why it can't be done, right? So we went out and we worked with a partner where we said, okay, let's take our top 10 to 15 jobs and let's benchmark and let's talk about what are the abilities that you do need for that job, leave, you know, let alone anything else. And then when we had people with disabilities apply, we said, you know, based on what we just studied, and again, you know, thank you, Aradhana, we did learn a great deal from you there. Based on the type of disability that you have, this is a job that you can comfortably do. So we brought in an element of science that made it very transparent for the managers, and it also gave them some level of confidence that, look, there is science behind it, all I've got to do is try. And the last thing we said is, don't worry, we're in this together. If it doesn't work, you know, we're a large organization. We'll figure something else out. We're not going to hold you. We're not going to penalize you if somebody is not able to perform. We are here to help you. And I think these 3-4 things, and a result of that is about a year and 3 months down the line, our number of people, representation went up by 50%. We're now over 400 people. And that was a number that was stagnant for many, many years. So I think wherever there is an intent, which is the most important word, and you work with intent, I think things start to sort of come
Wonderful.
together.
I think what you mentioned, continued focus, is very important. It's not just a tick mark that you remember on certain days. It has to be consistent. Can I get your inputs, Aradhana, on this quickly? We are out of time, maybe a couple of minutes on a take on this. How are you enabling this sustained focus on cultural transformation, that inclusivity, you know, and sensitizing people about it?
And also, before you answer, if you could just touch upon what are the trainings, because a lot of people here would be, you know, interested in knowing what Lemon Tree does in their training programs. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So there's a model we've come up with. It's a 7-pillar inclusion model, and it includes a number of steps. Sensitization is probably one of the early steps, because if the leadership believes in inclusion and understands the business case, it doesn't mean our 6,500 employees across India understand. It's important to engage with them, explain it to them, and sensitize them. So this goes on every month, every few months, depending on the topic that we're talking of. You're trying to tell them about why we're hiring folks with disability, and you're also telling them about the disability. So whether it's deaf, or low vision, or autism, or Down syndrome, you need to make the team members familiar that if you have a team member who has that special need, how best can you engage with them, and what environment do you need to create for them so that they're able to perform their best. So that process is very elaborate. The other is job mapping, which Anupama referred to right now. We have about 10 entry-level positions in the company, in the hotel, and you will do a job mapping for all 10 vis-a-vis each disability type. So you'll actually make a grid where you'll be able to say that the 25 or 30 tasks that a person does, say, as a food and beverage executive in the restaurant, these can be done by a deaf person, maybe not all 30, there'll be 3 of them. Example, taking a room service order, a deaf person cannot do because it won't work. Even technology won't help that process. We've tried that, by the way. It doesn't help. And similarly, there'll be 1 or 2 other items. There will be some places where you can change the standard operating procedure. Think about this carefully. So if a person has to take an order, the same boy is deaf and he's in the coffee shop and he has to take an order, since he cannot hear or speak, if the guest talks to him, it's of no use, right? So what that ID card says is that I am deaf, I'm very happy to help you if you write down what you want. We've taken our menu and we've given it numerical numbers. You know, in a hotel, it never happens. I challenge you to go open menus in hotels. It never happens. It happens in quick service restaurants. So the guest just has to write, I want item 2 and 17 and 34. That's all they have to write on that little order booklet. So you can change the procedure, you can remove tasks from their list, or you can aid with technology. This whole thing is understood during job mapping. With respect to training, what we've been able to address is that the way to train a person with a special need is to make it accessible and understandable and within reach of that person with that need. So if it's a deaf person, our entire training of 10 days, the 101 training for front office or food and beverage or sales or anything, has to be conducted in Indian Sign Language alongside the main training session. So we want integrated training groups. There are hearing and non-hearing people in that room, and you will conduct in the spoken format as well as in the sign language format. I want to tell you an interesting number. We also look at numbers. Our 6,500 employees, they know English, they know Hindi, and they know Indian Sign Language. Everybody. That's how it is. Because you cannot engage, you cannot engage hundreds and hundreds of deaf people across your company if you don't. One more step up. If a person wants to move up as a manager, I'm talking about a person with or without disability, he has to learn sign language deeper and better. And there are tests we conduct. You have to pass with a certain percentage. So if I move from executive to supervisor to assistant manager to restaurant manager to hotel manager, each time my depth of that language of sign language has to improve. And there's a way of testing it. We take our NGO partners' help because we don't know how to test it actually. And that's how. So if you engage with a hotel manager at Lemon Tree or a department head, his ability to speak in sign language is so excellent that if you see him and a deaf person and you don't know who's deaf, you cannot tell through that visual. You're not able to tell who it is because their hands are moving as quickly. So it's a very important part of this culture building. And as far as training goes, you have to do it in a visual format, in a written format, in a sound format. It depends on who you're addressing. If you're talking to someone with low vision, you'll have to make sure the videos work in a way that he can hear them. If you're talking to somebody, showing a video to a deaf person, all the tasks must be clearly shown by action. You cannot speak half the tasks out because how will he know what's happening? And everything is assisted and accompanied by sign language. So that's what we've done. A whole lot of other stuff, but no time.
Right. No, thank you so much. I think the very fact that this conference is taking place, there's a certain mainstreaming of these conversations. I don't think that day is far that all of us would love to know the sign language as well. Of course, I think we're moving towards that. Madhu, let me quickly, and Rahul, for my final question. You know, there are right etiquettes that everyone should be sensitized towards, you know, especially for when it comes to visually impaired people. Are we having the right etiquettes in place or can we improve?
Very interesting question. Etiquettes, so, you know, a lot of times when we talk about interacting with people with disabilities in general, people who are blind, low vision, or deaf, hard of hearing in particular, a lot of times we think a lot. And we literally have analysis paralysis. ऐसे बोलूं, ऐसे बोलूं, ये बोलूं, वो बोलूं कि ना बोलूं, and we end up not talking, or we end up saying something that may end up offending the person. So one etiquette is definitely in the language that we can follow, which is a lot of us. One, of course, is ask before you can decide what this person wants, right? Don't decide on my behalf. So ask me what I need, what help I need, how I want to be addressed, and I will let you know. I never want to be addressed as, oh, that girl, you know, that girl. That's how we usually talk. Oh, you see that pretty girl, you're the one who's blind. So those, I think, those aspects in the conversation does leave people feeling excluded. So you can simply address me as Madhu and don't call me inspirational for just being able to get up and show up to work, or maybe brush my teeth, or eat what I eat, or drink water. If you want to draw some inspiration from me, then it can definitely be for my work, for what I may have been able to achieve. The other, and then so language, people first language, no differently abled, no specially abled, people with disabilities, Madhu first. That's one of the biggest etiquettes that I want to talk about. and the other thing that I want to share is, we are human beings like anybody else. If we're able to bridge this gap between you and I, and these summits like these will help us do that. We will not need to have a special etiquette guide. We need the same growth and development as anybody else does. We have just like any able-bodied person has a different learning curve, similarly people with disabilities also have varying learning curves and potential, the hidden potential that we can tap into. So we can tap into that and not bucketizing, oh, you know, I met Madhu because Madhu could do this, every blind person can do that. That's another etiquette or an aspect that we can, consider. Every person is unique and every person's needs are unique. That's why we can have a general policy but adapt to specifics and have etiquettes with regards to that. There may be people who are low vision, and even in low vision, say a Rahul and a Madhu, if both of us have low vision, how I see the world, how I see the visuals, Rahul may not be able to see it similarly. So bucketizing and saying, oh, I know how low vision people work, so I will do exactly the same thing that Rahul wants for you as well, Madhu. Being able to just treat us as human, I think that's one of the biggest etiquettes as well. There's a lot, but
Wonderfully explained, Madhu. Thanks for this. Final comment, Rahul, about the etiquette part. Do you think what Madhu said, do you resonate with that?
Thanks for the question. I was just reflecting on an incident 2 days back. Interestingly, Dr. Kumar asked that, are you fearful of getting harassed by the police? 2 days back, I made a visit to the police station. And the reason was, I don't know how many people know, but under the rights for persons with disability, insulting a person with disability in a public forum is a criminal offense. However, in the last 7 years of the rule being enforced, there is not even a single complaint. Incidentally, I made that daring attempt on Friday to go to a police station and file a complaint. And look at what happens. Imagine the scene. I was told, "ठीक है, आप complain है, रख दीजिए, चले जाइए." Like, okay. And Sunday I go again. Like, you told me that you'll be coming back to me in 2 days. No response. Like, the PSI or the police senior inspector comes out and says, "देखिए, एक तो आप अंधे हैं, आप handicap हैं, इसलिए तो हम आपको सुन रहे हैं." And I'm just looking at it, I'm actually smiling. I'm like, you know what? I came to make a complaint around a derogatory remark, and look at the custodian of the law. They are the ones who are breaking the law. But now what do we do with all this? What do we do with these etiquettes? I have really been mimicked on the floor, but I always believed, and as a person with disability, and probably in the corporate world we all have heard it, performance is the best revenge. Itna bade ban jao, or when you are shining so bright, it will be difficult for people not to look at you. So I think that's the only way, and we will continue to leave people in awe, but also I'm amazed to see some of the great technological innovations that's happening. There are specialized apps which are working towards sensitization, and the way the corporate world is opening up, the kind of stories we are hearing from Uber, Amazon, Lemon Tree, Business World, and others, we are sure that there's soon going to be more enhanced, integrated sensitization tools like we have around other things, around gender sensitization and others. So this world is evolving. We got to be smiling, and I'm sure that change is going to come.
Absolutely evolving, and you're at the cutting edge of this evolution. Akshay, final words from you. Yeah.
One last story, and I'm sorry if this is a repetition of something that happened in the morning, because I was going in and out of the room because of managing the conference. Because it's a very, very famous story of a famous personality, Helen Keller, Helen Keller was deaf and blind at the same time. And a small girl came to Helen Keller, and Helen Keller touched her and said, "Oh my, what a beautiful pink skirt." And how do you know? You can't see. And that's the power of people who have different abilities. So I can't close my eyes and find out the color of people's shirts or skirts. So let's explore the abilities that people have. So this is amazing. And so, like I said, let's start asking the right questions. What's the benefit? Then, rather than asking the questions, what are the challenges? So I'll leave you with that thought. And please do not go away after lunch, because we have a mesmerizing performance by a professional dance troupe, and they are people with special abilities. It'll leave you mesmerized, trust me on that. So stick around, and let's
a
get
round of applause
amazed.
for all the panelists, please. Yes.
Maybe I have one question from the audience. The audience has been silent mostly. Just one question.
One question. Anybody
Okay,
have
we
a
can
question?
take a question, please. Yes. Raise your hands, and we'll send you the mic.
There is not struggle to in our mind, right? So that's something that I really want to leave everyone with a thought. I don't see corporates getting invested too much with organizations to train people today. While we do that when we hire them.
Okay, anyone wants to take this? Yeah.
So it's a little different for us. We partner with a whole lot of NGOs across India. We are engaging with them over the years. So sometimes they are people of a younger age who are being trained there. They take inputs from us. We are not in the education space, so I won't give that answer that I go and educate someone who's 5 years old. We don't. But we do give inputs to those who are into skill training for mainstream employment. And this has been working in an iterative manner over the years. Separately, from our CSR money, we are supporting organizations who are in some way training or educating people with disability. Usually those organizations are working with young adults, but there is one amongst them who's working with children also. So we're trying to give an input in the best way we can. You have to remember our organizations, our corporates, let's call them, are in the business that they are in. So we are a hotel company. We are not a charitable organization. So we have to focus on what our goal is, but we do it in a sustainable manner. That is why this whole HR approach has been taken.
Yeah, so I think that's Bhavneet, right? Okay. We at Amazon also, we're not, again, we have presence in Amazon in the community, so we make efforts as well. And there are concerted efforts that we make in working with youngsters who've acquired disabilities through NGOs. In fact, we've also had a letter of intent signed with the DEPD and Skill Council of People with Disabilities, where we support and we partner with NGOs, where we work on their education center in upskilling them and making them industry ready. And it's a very pertinent question that you raised, because there has been a gap because of not being inclusive and putting them into buckets. PWDs have, a lot of PWDs have not been make industry ready. So initiatives like the ones that I spoke of and ones like Aradhana spoke of, we are making intentional efforts to make PWD staff industry ready, if I can put it this way.
You know, just one dream that at least I have. Today, the ball has started rolling and inclusion is becoming a mainstream subject. That in itself is a great beginning. But I think our true arrival will be the day जिस दिन सशक्त भारत की कमान एक दिव्यांग प्रधानमंत्री के हाथ में होगी. The day Ira Singhal will not just be the special educator, but will be leading the department as relevant as, not to say others are not, but defense as the secretary. The day we will see Dr. Neeru Kumar representing the nation and probably as a leader. तो हम सब भी नारा लगाएंगे. But yes, that's a dream. We all need to see Fortune 500, top 5 CEO, CXO positions, CEO, CFO, CTO, CIO, CHRO. Not even one person with disability. I think it's a question to reflect. But with the way we are now on the journey, and thanks to people like Ask Inside, BW, Uber, Amazon, and many others, one day we want to see a significant representation at the leadership. Probably it's a dream that will take time, but it will come true. So let's just together take pledge to that. Thanks.
Thank you, Rahul. And you're given idea for another summit also on this. Thank you so much for this wonderful panel. We're out of time.